In today's video, we're going to be discussing some more NHL free agency news. We have some more RFAs that have signed contracts with their existing teams. We have some 2018 draft members that have signed their entry-level deals. And we have one player who signed a 5-year extension with their existing club as well. We'll discuss all those players coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. Some of these signings were announced over the weekend, but a lot of them were announced here on the morning of July the 16th. So let's jump in here and take a look at all these new contract signings for today. Now we'll start off with a couple of players who have signed entry-level deals. These are players that were drafted in the 2018 NHL Draft. Toronto Maple Leafs signed their first-round selection, defenseman Rasmus Sandin, who was playing in the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds organization in the OHL. He signed his 3-year entry-level deal. The Pittsburgh Penguins have also signed their 2018 draft selection, Philip Hollander, to a 3-year entry-level contract as well. So now that these players are signed, they are officially part of the organization and they can start their development. Obviously, it is possible they could still remain in junior or possibly look to play with those teams' American Hockey League affiliates here in the coming season. So now let's jump into the player who signed his contract extension. Obviously, this extension will kick in after this year, and we're talking about Anaheim Ducks center Adam Henrique. Obviously, Henrique would be entering the final year of his existing contract here in the 18-19 season. So this 5-year deal will kick in after this season. It comes with an annual cap hit of $5.825 million. So I guess if you're a Ducks fan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the contract. I had seen some speculation previously that Adam Henrique may not want to stay in Anaheim past the end of his contract, and he may be looking to return closer to New Jersey where he lived for so long. Obviously, he was a part of the Devils organization for a long time before being traded to the Anaheim Ducks for Sami Vatanen earlier last season. Obviously, those reports are clearly untrue, and he seems to be more than happy to remain with the Anaheim Ducks here for at least another 5 seasons. Obviously, the Anaheim Ducks have a lot of other long-term contracts on their books here, including Ryan Getzlaf, Corey Perry, Ryan Kessler, etc. So I'd really like to hear your comments and what you think of this contract for Adam Henrique. When Adam Henrique was traded to the Anaheim Ducks in the Sami Vatanen deal here, there was a condition as well in that trade, was that if he re-signed an extension here with the Anaheim Ducks, that New Jersey would then receive the 2019 third-round selection from Anaheim. So now that they've re-signed this player, obviously that condition kicks in, and New Jersey will now receive that third-round pick as compensation for him remaining in the Anaheim organization. Now jumping into some other signings here, we have Elias Lindholm, newly acquired by the Calgary Flames, has signed a pretty big contract here, a 6-year deal with $4.85 million. Obviously, he came over from the Carolina Hurricanes in a fairly substantial trade at the NHL Draft, which saw Dougie Hamilton go to the Hurricanes, and we saw Noah Hanifin come over with Elias Lindholm to the Calgary Flames here. Obviously, the Flames are betting on Lindholm being a productive top 6 forward for the duration of that contract. Obviously, if you take a look at what some of these other players with similar type numbers and experience have gotten, they certainly appear to have overpaid here. So obviously, we'll see how this contract turns out. If he develops into the type of player he was drafted as, and if he develops into the type of player that the Flames are hoping he becomes, this contract very well may be very fair and potentially could even turn out to be a bargain for them if he's very productive, especially if he gets a chance to play with Gaudreau and Monahan on that top line, which has been kind of speculated here. But now that they also signed James Neal, you got to wonder between Neal and Lindholm who's going to play with who there in that top 6. So I guess time will tell here. So if you're a Flames fan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on his contract. If you look at some of these other players that have gotten recently signed, it does appear as though they certainly did overpay, and they're kind of paying for what they're projecting him to be, which is quite the opposite that we see in a lot of cases. A lot of players end up taking less money, have to prove themselves, and then once they have a bargain contract, usually try to make up for it on the other side with kind of overpaying, paying for past performance, which is the more common thing that we see in the NHL. But obviously that's not the case here. I really think the Flames are betting on him being a very productive top 6 forward, and I hope for their sake that it all works out. But the contract does appear to be a little long and a little bit rich for what I thought he would actually end up obtaining. But leave some comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts to see what you think of this contract as well. Now, there's plenty of other signings to jump into. The Ottawa Senators have re-signed forward Nick Paul to a 1-year, 2-way contract worth $650,000. Obviously, Nick Paul originally came over to Ottawa in the Jason Spezza trade to Dallas a number of years ago, and he's been slowly developing, has never really developed into a regular NHL player. He has had a crack at the NHL a few times, but has yet to be able to stick with the big club and become a regular NHL player. So I guess this is probably his last kick at the can here. Now, the Columbus Blue Jackets have made a couple of signings as well. They've re-signed defenseman Ryan Murray as well as forward Oliver Bjorkstrand. Both of these deals appear to be fairly reasonable contracts. The Murray contract is a one-year contract worth just north of $2 million here. Obviously, Murray's name has been a name that's come up a little bit in trade speculation, and this certainly isn't going to help matters. Obviously, the Blue Jackets are not comfortable and confident enough to sign him to a longer-term deal. So with a one-year, shorter-term valued contract here, that's certainly going to enhance the possibility that maybe he ends up being moved on here sometime during the season or prior to training camp. So time will tell on Ryan Murray. But the other contract they handed out for Oliver Bjorkstrand, I think potentially could have a lot of value down the road. He was a very productive player for the Blue Jackets last season. Bjorkstrand was given a 3-year contract at $2.5 million. So based on what he brings to the table and based on how he's played, if you look around at other players, I think that could potentially be a very team-friendly contract here if he continues to develop and improve here over the next couple of years. So I think some pretty reasonable signings there by the Blue Jackets. The Nashville Predators have re-signed forward Ryan Hartman, and this one's a little puzzling to me, is to get a one-year deal at $875,000, which is kind of a head shaker to me. I really thought he would get a little bit more term and a little bit more money. Obviously, Hartman was an RFA. Getting the one-year deal isn't too shocking. Sometimes when RFAs have a hard time coming to an agreement or they're trying to avoid arbitration, oftentimes they do get these shorter term deals. But for a player who Nashville traded for last year, gave up a first-round pick for, and they seem to be quite high on him, and to only give him a one-year deal at $875,000, I think he's earned a little bit more than that. Really, 2 years ago, Ryan Hartman scored 19 goals, put up 31 points. Now, this past year is the second full year in the NHL. He did score a little bit less, but he still ended up with 31 points as well. So he's been a consistent 30-point player over the past 2 seasons, which really isn't that far off from Lindholm. But yeah, you see the Flames, giving him a 6-year deal over $4 million, whereas he gets $875,000 from Nashville. So kind of confusing. I mean, I do understand Nashville has some cap concerns with some of the extensions coming up here in the next year or two for players like Ryan Ellis and Roman Josi. That back end obviously has a lot of money invested in it, but they're not that bad for cap space right now, but like I said, they do have some big decisions to make moving forward into the next couple of seasons here. But for right now, I was really surprised that Ryan Hartman didn't get a little bit better of a contract. Personally, I think he's worth more than $875. I would have thought it'd be at least maybe around $2.5 million, something along those lines. I mean, he's a proven 30-point guy, 19 goal scorers the other year. So obviously, not shocked it's a short-term 1 to 2 year contract, but I am surprised that he didn't get a bigger contract. The Montreal Canadiens have re-signed center Phillip Danault to a 3-year contract worth just over $3 million per season. Obviously, Phillip Danault, due to their lack of center depth, has played a lot in the number 1, number 2 center role for the Habs. So based on his previous production, and previously discussed this player on this channel, we kind of did feel that around $3 million would likely be the landing spot where he would end up for the contract. So this seems pretty reasonable for the team, especially if he's going to continue in a top 6 role playing center ice, getting top 6 minutes. Then $3 million is pretty fair. Even if they can make other acquisitions and he can be a solid number 2 center for them, then obviously that's going to be a pretty fair contract. Really, even in a number 3 center, it's not a terrible contract at all. So I think this is pretty reasonable for Danault, and I think it's team-friendly enough to keep their cap situation in line. So I like this deal for the Habs and Danault. I'm just hoping that they can get some more center depth so that he can play properly spotted here in the lineup to kind of play where he should be, which is probably number 2, maybe number 3, really, in my opinion. Obviously, he's had to play higher up in the lineup due to the lack of depth in that position, but hopefully that'll change here for the Montreal Canadiens moving forward. But at this point in time, it may not, because a lot of their youth would be the ones taking those other center spots that they cut here in the draft and over the last couple of seasons. And until they bring in some more experience at center ice, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Phillip Danault to play a big role for this team. So that covers all the latest signings since our last free agency update here a few days ago. So if you're new to the channel here, consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams. There's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. Don't forget to leave some comments and let me know your thoughts on all these contracts. There's some of these that are certainly very much debatable and worthy of discussion, like the Lindholm and Hartman deals especially. So I'd like to know your thoughts and we can discuss further in the comment section. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next time.